What occurs when an air steward challenges the legitimacy of a reserved man's choice to wear a plain cross hanging from his neck, devoid of understanding that the individual is Keanu Reeves, commenced as a delicate exercise of discernment regarding a silver crucifix transformed into a potent artifact, a moment capable of rocking an entire flight. And upon their arrival, no one would dismiss what he uttered or the manner in which he expressed it. And before we depart, please let us know your destination. We're delighted you're reading this. Your response is within the Central Hall of Los Angeles International Airport throbbed with activity. Amidst the usual commotion, people surged in. In every direction, children tugged at colorful, suitcase-wielding executives tapped away at their keyboards with intensity. On their mobile devices, periodically looking at flight displays amidst the frenzied throng. A lone man strolled with a consistent, almost unaffected pace, sported a simple black attire, worn in t-shirt, faded jeans, and a set of worn-out trainers. No fancy timepiece, no dazzling adornments, but lacking in protection, surrounded by a retinue. Making way for him was Keanu Reeves. A handful of people cast him inquisitive stares. Perhaps it seemed to waver, unsure of itself. They saw it, but most failed to comprehend. He brushed past him, indistinguishable from any passing wayfarer. Perhaps even someone who appeared subtly off, out of place within such a refined setting. However, one particular aspect was especially striking about him. A subtle pendant adorned his neck. A tiny silver crucifix, barely noticeable, shimmered faintly, softly illuminated by the airport lights. It wasn't grand or ostentatious, but it possessed. There existed an element of that item, something more substantial than its. Keanu advanced without hesitation. Unapologetic arrogance, simply being. Upon arriving at the first-class level, he entered the priority queue through the gate, surrendered his ticket for the flight. The staff member on duty, his name was listed, distinctly stated on the boarding pass, but the woman standing before him exuded impeccable posture. Flawless, consistent, piercing stare lingered for a moment. Secondly, sir, she examined the ticket. Then, she looked back at him, her forehead creasing slightly. I believe you're mistaken. You're in the incorrect spot. This line is reserved exclusively for first-class passengers. Keanu showed no signs of surprise or offense. I simply responded with a serene smile, stating, I'm here. The appropriate choice. At the gate, the attendant was recognized by her. Carla glanced at the name tag while reviewing the ticket. It was undeniably legitimate, the name being. She was definitely aware of Keanu Reeves' identity. Of course, though, she hadn't been able to place him. Initially, his relaxed attire, characterized by its well-worn state, drew attention. The absence of any celebrity involvement in sneakers. Her aura was incongruous with the image she presented. Accustomed to experiencing first class, even after verifying his identity, she paused, uncertain. The latent prejudice had already come to light. She allowed him to proceed, but her gaze lingered on him. He moved slowly downward, a sense of unease accompanying his steps. Hallway, and took his place in his initial. Sit comfortably in a class, effortlessly like someone who had frequently performed this action previously, but Carla continued to stare, sensing something was amiss. Something about him that was unsettling to her. Perhaps it was the agreement, the uncomplicatedness she anticipated, excess, or perhaps it was the crucifix on the necklace is now completely in view. As he fastened his seat belt, her movement stilled. For a fleeting instant, her eyes fixed on the minuscule. A symbol appeared, and a wave of tension swept through. She remained silent, her face betraying nothing, but took one step, then another. She progressed forward, guided him down the aisle with a steady, resolute, almost practiced movements her countenance had, altered a more cautious approach deliberately. Within her, something had changed. She allowed him. Bored, however, her attention is drawn to the crucifix. Abruptly, she stills, her gaze fixed on his chest. A subtle change flickers across her face. She accompanies him to his seat with an unyielding gait. Intentional strides, accompanied by the drone of the airplane, felt almost like a form of therapy as the plane ascended gracefully towards the heavens, the world. The world below dissolved into a swirling mix of clouds and sunlight. Sparkling rooftops were visible from the first-class cabin. The air inside the cabin was refreshingly cool and conditioned. The illumination was subtly reduced, hinting at. Restless, Keanu sat, unable to find comfort even in sleep's absence. He remained seated, his arms casually resting on cushioned armrests, his breaths even and slow. He wasn't engrossed in a book, nor was he observing anything. Whatever he was merely existing in his quietness somehow drew even more attention to him. More than any noise ever could, the crucifix hanging from his neck had moved. Somewhat eased during ascent, now at repose. Clearly visible at the summit, his simple black. The shirt lacked boldness, it wasn't refined to absolute perfection. In truth, it appeared almost slightly, showing signs of age, worn and frayed at the edges as though it had experienced numerous decades of narratives, and still, that unassuming piece of metal held greater significance than. Carla's weight was heavier than most people could conceive. She glimpsed inside the galley from her vantage point, the aisle with sufficient visibility to maintain a watchful gaze. He remarked on his posture as he sat there. So peaceful, so grounded, so confidently unafraid. It was something he bestowed upon her. Restless, yet she was unable to clarify the reasons behind her actions of dealing with famous people prior to those who were boisterous and demanding, those designated as such, those rightfully named. However, Keanu did not conform to any of those established categories. Nevertheless, there was something peculiar about him, or perhaps concerning that necklace which evoked an unfamiliar unease settled in her chest, a feeling later she refrained from naming. Her demeanor was professional as she approached. She had meticulously cultivated that air of composure, mirrors at the forefront of training seminars. Her own thoughts each time she encountered. In these circumstances, wasn't merely aviation was her kingdom, and she reigned supreme. Resolved to maintain its authority, madam, she started speaking a touch softer. Let me just reiterate that we have specific policies concerning explicit, symbolic expressions of faith in communal areas. Particularly within this cabin, we request, with careful consideration. Keanu turned to her gradually. His face held an unreadable expression. I'm sorry, he offered. There's a rule I've transgressed, she stated. Stayed supple, yet possessed a subtle undercurrent. Refined, it's not about disregarding rules. It centers on establishing a neutral stance. In certain travel settings, some passengers could. He perceived certain symbols as inherently controversial. For a fleeting moment, my gaze fell upon the crucifix I had flown past. Just like this, numerous times in the past, no one's. Has she ever faced a problem where she felt unsure about how to proceed? It wasn't the answer she had anticipated, no. The times, they're indeed changing for some travelers. I'm sensing heightened sensitivity lately. Request everyone to be mindful, please. You could discreetly place it in her hand, her gesture suggesting, somewhat toward the necklace, as if she avoided directly indicating as though the symbol could potentially cause her pain. Keanu didn't respond with fury, but instead, this crucifix also failed to meet the requirements. It's a fashion choice, not an act of defiance. It's an inherent aspect of my being, Carla insisted, forcing a smile meant to soothe, not to deceive. Of course, we connect and we value that. Just request that travelers maintain personal expressions, particularly those that are subtle and understated, especially in luxurious compartments, her voice adorned in. The policy held a subtly hostile undercurrent. The female occupant in the seat opposite. He subtly glanced up, focusing his attention on a man. Two spaces behind, someone took out one earbud, leaving the air undisturbed. Had altered something unsettling had, began to blossom quietly, without tumult or disorder. But Keanu's voice, though clearly audible, persisted in its even tone. With utmost respect, I contend that. Carla felt targeted, her eyes widening in surprise. Forgive me if another person was wearing a pendant. If you were to choose, would you select a tree, a star, or a stone? She instructed them to conceal it, and then opened her mouth. Finished it reset, but that's not the intended outcome. So what exactly is it regarding silence that She didn't respond. Instead, she simply cleared her throat. Throat retreated with a curt nod, then spoke. For a second, Keanu lifted his gaze. Once more, at a more leisurely pace, this necklace now has been instrumental in saving my life on multiple occasions during wartime. Nighttime hospital room zones. I believed I'd remain asleep, lulled by his voice. Didn't ascend, yet it occupied the space as if the roar of thunder within a cathedral. I confess, I won't conceal it. Never at any time. Carla demonstrated, for the inaugural occasion, what she was experiencing her growing exasperation. Disbelief splintered it, shattering through the plastic. Regarding her customer service demeanor, it was a fleeting glimpse, yet it appeared nonetheless. And all witnessed it. Travelers transformed the energy has completely transitioned. No longer hesitant individuals started assembling in quietude. A man retrieved his phone from somewhere. Lap subtly aimed the camera in the direction of. He murmured to someone in the aisle beside him. Is your partner truly Keanu Reeves? However, Keanu remained oblivious to the change. Wasn't aiming to make one, he simply was, merely maintaining stillness, upholding a limit. Some believed soft Carla possessed the ability to sense. Reclaiming control restored order once more if you decline, I'll be forced to take this further. Captain, take the necessary actions. Their gazes locked, now filled with a peaceful intensity. Power, but understand this. The issue isn't. What burdens my heart is also what weighs on yours. A profound silence descended upon the eyes. In a cabin, it could just as well have been somewhere else entirely. Even as Nicole took a small step backward, space. Even she sensed it, not merely the force of. The words themselves, though, held a kernel of truth, Carla. She parted her lips, then closed them once more. He was speechless, and the fact was obvious to all. Keanu states with unwavering composure, this necklace has been a lifesaver for me on multiple occasions, and Carla's professional facade won't be concealed. Her irritation is now blatantly apparent. The aircraft had ascended to its designated cruising height. Clouds moved across the sky in a languid, deliberate manner. Underneath the wings, within the confines of first class, the cabin exuded a subtle yet refined elegance. Luxurious reclining seats, champagne flutes at the ready. The infrequent chime of cutlery, but in one nook of the cabin, a faint hum resonated. A distinct form of energy, the aftershock of an unforeseen clash. To observe, Keanu remained silently seated in his. The crucifix remained undisturbed, its position unchanged. Calmly situated above his shirt, Carla retraced her steps, her heart heavy. Faster and more inflexible conveyed anew. Beside his seat, she halted, her lips close by. Strictly worded, neutral in tone, however, this instance. The attempt to conceal was non-existent. The strain in her voice, sir, I've been informed of A handful of remarks from fellow travelers, a few. She spoke in a way that conveyed her unease. The same voice, measured with care, the one, which purported to be objective, but couldn't quite conceal its. With an undertone of calm, Keanu gazed at her. The silence that followed Carla's pause made the answer crystal clear. However, she was reluctant to express it directly. Regarding the exhibition of ideological emblems, within a mutually contained setting, we aim to foster an environment where everyone felt at ease with Keanu's presence. A blink, a sign of belief, moves people. Uncertainly, Carla inhaled sharply. Picture this. What if everyone suddenly started wearing religious symbols and political emblems? It would generate ideological catchphrases, fragmentation within a space intended for unity. Inclined forward a touch, his voice still humble, but now it held a purposeful heaviness. Perhaps the issue isn't then a matter of clarity. Perhaps it's the very essence of what people have always sought. His words reverberated, instilling a sense of feeling in him. More impactful than his words, a couple sat. The man discreetly shared a look with someone close by. He tilted his phone, then tapped the record button. Discreet button, avoiding any notice Carla. She adjusted her posture, as if attempting to reassert dominance through. In terms of my standing, I'm merely adhering to established procedures. If you continue to withhold cooperation, I might be forced to alert security immediately. We have their attention. More eyes gazed, and a peaceful silence descended. Above the cabin, the type of silence that descends when genuine, unfiltered intensity pierces through. Beyond the veneer of the ordinary, but Keanu. He remained unmoved, his voice steady. But instead, he gazed directly into her eyes and just make the necessary calls, whoever you have to. Grasp this, the issue isn't that what's reflected in your gaze, it resides upon my chest. Complete silence hung in the air. Carla fixed her gaze on him, captivated. Within the unexpected reflection he held, not with decision, but expressed with lucidity his statements were. They weren't aggressive. They were genuine instead. Made swallowing them more difficult, a flight. An attendant, situated further away, abruptly halted their activity. The pair persisted in filming a scene or two. Passengers gave barely perceptible nods, though they remained silent. The divide was emerging, however. It wasn't a matter of differing religious beliefs or political stances. The line blurred between what was perceived and what truly existed. Carla silently retreated, her jaw set. She gripped tightly, unaware at that moment, but the tide was starting to shift. Keanu wouldn't. Rearward. Reach out to whomever you require, but keep this in mind. The issue isn't something weighing on my mind. It's the essence you radiate, the ambience you exude. The first-class cabin had undergone a transformation. What initially manifested as understated tension escalated towards something denser, more charged, a kind of subtle change that caused people sit more upright and speak more softly. Take a closer look at Keanu still, peacefully sat in his seat, his silver feet resting. A crucifix placed upon his chest, unbroken and apparent not in the form of a assertion, yet as a factual reality it had remained unchanged. He remained motionless, yet everyone surrounding him. Had Carla been positioned in the galley's arms? Her jaw was clenched tightly. Her expression now held a new intensity. Her irritation was fueled by the challenge. The legitimacy of authority had been subtly challenged at the forefront of the very passengers who she was raised to be respected, trained to give orders. I could sense the weight of judgment bearing down on me from various directions, not solely from Keanu, but originating within her own group and potentially. She idly tapped her fingers against. The tablet was secured to her tray, its card attached. The uniform she was wearing felt unusually burdensome all of a sudden. more constricted than normal at the collar she. He inhaled deeply before pivoting abruptly. Nicole, I need you to be completely honest with me. The younger employee looked uncertain, unsure of what to do. Is everything okay, Carla? She gave a smile that lacked genuine warmth we possess. A scenario I'd rather manage with. Passenger 2 is declining to comply with the protocol. Follow your explicit instruction. Nicole, her anger rising, looked. Is Carla uncertain regarding the necklace? Didn't give a straight answer. It concerns. Establishing a benchmark, Nicole proceeded, hesitantly returning to Keanu's row several times. Passengers feigned indifference to their surroundings. Business focus shifted to books or digital displays, but focus elsewhere, a solitary man nearby. The bulkhead kept recording nonchalantly. His phone was situated on the armrest, positioned at a slight angle to encompass the seat. On the opposite side, Carla went back to. Keanu's position beside her was unyielding, his stance more steadfast than. Nicole was positioned directly behind her, simply observing, just watching Mr. Reeves. Carla spoke more forcefully this time, employing her complete name now that she had finally. Upon recognizing his identity, I am informing. Captain, should you persist in your disregard regarding cabin expectations, we'll need to make adjustments. Additional measures may even encompass airport security procedures following Keanu's arrival. Gradually shifted his eyes to her, unaffected by wearing a. Carla's cheeks reddened when she declined the necklace. Guidance provided to crew members during un. The words conveyed a sense of active flight, sounding formal and authoritative. Practiced, yet they fell flat, like a fabrication. In a tranquil room, a greater number of passengers were. Now, with attentive focus, there was no spectacle to be seen. No yelling, only the undeniable feeling of an escalating clash and a chance that something significant was. With a soft voice, Nicole said, perhaps they ought to have a joint conversation with the captain. Before things escalated, Carla intervened by addressing her. Maintain a sharp, disapproving expression, but it was already too. By then, the moment had transformed. Carla had attempted to exercise power, but what she'd. Instead, a loss of control was discovered. 5 minutes elapsed before the cockpit door swung open. Captain Morales emerged, composed, a face etched by the mid-50s, yet possessing a gentle and kind demeanor. Of a man whose serenity you could sense beforehand. He verbally expressed himself, and he traversed the aisle. Intention, not urgency, guided his steps as he arrived. Carla advanced into the galley. Quickly, sir, we have a passenger aboard. Disregarding fundamental politeness, I've repeatedly requested him to keep it hidden. A devotional object that might cause offense to. He rejected the cabin's ambience. Morales heard it all, letting it unfold without interruption. Then shifted his attention to Nicole, and Nicole paused, considering her response. What's your perspective? She finally asked. He was quietly respectful. He simply wasn't willing to let anything escalate. Morales inclined his head in agreement, concealing his necklace. Entered the aisle, instantly drawing every gaze. He approached Keanu with a calm demeanor, his hands outstretched. Secretly, in a manner reminiscent of a professor, getting ready to address a discerning audience. Student, this is Captain Morales. Recognize that there's been some dispute concerning a policy I desire to guarantee the welfare of all individuals on those on board, including the crew and passengers, might I? Keanu gazed upward, requesting his own perspective. Expression remained composed, voice unwavering. My attendant instructed me to keep this hidden. He gently caressed the crucifix, murmuring, it could cause unease for others. I told her, pausing for a moment, no to this necklace. Have been a constant presence in my life for years. It's not representative of an ideology, but rather of the enduring strength of my faith. which sustained me. As a last resort, I refuse to wear it. I wear it as a reminder because it evokes a strong feeling in me. I remain, though the cabin is now gone. Even from afar, you could still discern the faint clicking sound. 3 seatbelts buckles, positioned 3 rows back. Captain Morales heard, and as Keanu. He remained silent for a moment before responding. He turned his gaze back to Carla instead. His voice, though soft, held a resolute tone as he spoke. Something. Rudely, Carla began to speak, but when words failed him, he sought solace in Nicole's presence. Once more, any aggression from Nicole was met with, "No, sir," Captain Morales breathed out, shaking his head. The feeling of leadership's weight becoming established. Following his next utterance, the cabin lights flickered. Though dimmed, Carla found no solace in the darkness. She was positioned in the rear of the airplane, concealed by the galley's curtain, a phone. Constantly buzzing in her pocket, she hadn't accessed it within the preceding 10 minutes. It was unnecessary, as she possessed that knowledge already. The video rapidly spread, her visage and her tone captivating all who saw it. Her speech, as delivered to Keanu Reeves, to conceal his crucifix, he did everything in his power. Currently being analyzed by unknown individuals online. Globally, a constriction gripped her chest, consumed by panic, yet haunted by a deeper, more profound shame. But not due to any negative response because now she perceived it as well, the moment unfolding again. Through her thoughts, not through her viewpoint, but from all others, from Nicole's perspective. The travelers from Keanu's ship hadn't. While she maintained neutrality, fairness had eluded her, had assessed him with quiet politeness, in a professional manner, which unfortunately exacerbated the situation. Memories washed over her, carrying the sound of her grandmother's voice. Gentle, well-loved kindness isn't what you express it as your deliberate unveiling. Carla had dedicated her entire existence to concealment. Beneath policies, under protocols concealed by control, and now escape was impossible. The captain emerged from the cockpit. Morales's vocalization across through its intercom system. This airline expresses its dedication to value inclusivity and the right to declare one's belief without apprehension, or it was a shame. The message was subtle yet unmistakable. Understanding its significance, Keanu sat quietly. The crucifix in seat 2A remained undisturbed. Despite being clearly visible, he refrained from boasting. Hadn't taken revenge, and that feeling of being unavenged was painful. More than what would have happened had Carla cleaned up. Her gaze met his, and she inhaled deeply, her breath trembling. Was unsure of what she intended to say. However, she understood she couldn't avoid it. She had to confront it. Exited the galley and began the walk to. The front appeared more extended than normal. Glimmering lights danced off the sleek, polished seats, and her eyes, filled with curiosity, followed her as she moved closer to Keanu. As stillness descended upon the cabin, she remained as calm as ever, her composure unwavering as she stopped. The words failed to materialize before him, and thus she allowed her physical being to express itself. Carla gradually sank to her knees. Gasps shattered the quiet. I had been mistaken. She spoke in a soft voice, her words trembling as she said, Personally, I was responsible for safeguarding the cabin. I was trying to be professional, but I was really just safeguarding myself from my own unease." Tears. In her eyes, a wellspring arose. I've concealed myself there. Throughout my entire life, neutrality was my unwavering belief. Strengthened me, but it also left me unable to see. She met his gaze and apologized. "I'm sorry, Keanu." Remained silent for a while, then softly he stood tall and extended his hand, which she accepted. He gently assisted her to her feet with quiet dignity. The applause died down, leaving only a lingering moment with Carla. Continued to stand before Keanu, still reeling, but transformed now, open in a manner she hadn't experienced since her initial placement. She felt exposed, vulnerable, under the uniform's gaze. Unexpectedly less weighty, Keanu remained, grasping her hand without intending to convey a message. Simply to be there, Carla murmured softly. Almost silently, I muttered to myself, I don't know how. Reverse my actions, Keanu gazed at her with. You needn't reverse kindness. It stands as it is. She carefully released her hand, and you faced her. That's a greater accomplishment than what most people achieve. The cabin held its silence, its stillness unbroken after a blink. Observing, but now everyone appeared indifferent. They seemed to be moved as they assessed her. Keanu pointed to the seat next to him, inviting me to sit. Carla, having nodded, sat in contemplation for a while. Her stance was no longer rigid, no longer. In the past, I held on to the belief that performing. A gentle remark she made prior to this. Work existed before regulations, pre-programmed instructions, and apprehension. Keanu Reeves prioritizes harmony with grace, opting to avoid confrontation. Subdued belief, resounding truth, air stewardess. Offers an apology in mid-flight, with the entire world observing. However, Carla was unconcerned about the articles. For another reason had shifted. 2 weeks passed, and then a gentle, natural sunlight poured through the window of In a modest apartment, Carla found herself seated. Her phone captured a video of her, unadorned, without any makeup. She was dressed simply, in a plain t-shirt and a uniform. In her grasp, she held a petite silver. The crucifix Keanu had presented to her following the same flight suit he'd been in throughout it all. She gazed into the camera's eye, a focus that mirrored my years of dedication. Seeing professionalism as requiring concealment, she gazed down at me, reflecting on who I had become. Cross, but it brought to mind what it to be human. Her smile graced her face today. No more concealing yourself, she said, pausing before adding, thank you. Keanu. She concluded the recording, and then, for the first time in an extended period, she experienced. The camera's recording ceased entirely. She remained silent, her grip unwavering. The cross, reframed, not as a solely religious icon, but serving as a poignant reminder of Grace's courage, the strength of selecting kindness above all else.